Hey everyone, welcome back to Rhythm Railroad. So this evening I'm working on my CATS panel, making a few modifications, and basically what I'm trying to achieve is a way to display the labels of the trains going through within the double main line that is not a point A to B kind of thing. It's a loop. So basically, the main level, for those of you who don't know my layout, the main level here is basically a loop. It goes all the way around the basement, continuing through here, around the wall, and it's just one big loop. So that is what I consider my CSX territory, which is this here. It's got a yard in it. And then once you get here, it basically, you end up here again. So it loops around. But the problem with that and CATS is that CATS, at least from what I understand, can't figure that out without making it look silly. In other words, I would have to literally draw a line going around, or two lines going around to show that loop and make that an entire block. But I did that originally and it just looked really weird because there was this giant block for each one of those tracks, and every time the train would go into it, it would, the whole thing would illuminate in bright red. And so I took it out, and like I said, I don't need to have it, but I still run the trains fine. I still run the sessions fine. But the problem is that if I set a label, for example, if there's a train sitting here on track 2 of the CSX, and I set a label, let me do that right now. Let's get a little closer here. So if I set a train by right-clicking on the occupied block, and I click on position train, I get a list of all the trains that I have already configured. But I'm just going to pick anything like this manifest number 2 train. So you'll see a label pops up where that train is currently located. And obviously as the blocks, light up or get occupied, that label goes with it, and which is the coolest thing. That's what I was trying to achieve with the CATS panel, for the most part. So let me just show you how that. I have just a box car here with resistors. So I'm just gonna kind of go into the next block, so you can see this crossover here is a block. You can see how that label has moved over right there to CP Flam, which is the control point here, right? So, and then if I go further, I would go into the Schenectady area. Let me just get level ground here. And you're going to see the label also move there. But the problem is that now that is supposed to connect to this. That's why you see that this is also occupied. So the issue is that I want that label to be able to pop up here somewhere, either here or there. It doesn't really matter, but as long as it gets to this side of the screen. And what's happening is that once it gets to the end of the line here, it thinks it's done. It thinks that's the end. So it just leaves the label there. And what I needed to do is recognize that it's actually here now. So as you can see, that label, even if I go to the next block, it's not going to go anywhere. It's a pretty long block, so I'm just going to push this around. As we go downhill, we're going to enter the next block, which is right here at CP Drag. And so I put this little block here just to stop for demonstration purposes. So I should be in the next block now, which is the case in the panel. You can see it now released the red occupied block here and moved over to Drag, which is where we're sitting right now. But you can see that the label is stuck over here. and it's always like that. It's not like a glitch. So, and it doesn't matter which track I'm on, whether it's 1 or 2. They just, once it gets here, it thinks it's done, so it leaves it there. So what I tried to do, and this is what I'm just basically thinking out loud here on this video. What I tried to do, I'm going to go to my designer part of Cats. I tried to make the loop, but there's an option when you make these loops as you're, configuring your blocks. I'll show you real quick. If you just hit Control E while you're, on top of a block like that, you get this window, and then you can define the block right here. So when you define the block, what I basically did is I created Schenectady track 2 blank and also a track 1 blank, but I tried to do it the same way that I do the rest of the section to see if it would jump over like the other ones do. But so basically, the cool part about this is that you can click on this box that says Show Block if you want it to actually appear on the actual panel. But in this case, what I did is I unselected it. I took the check mark out like that, so that now these are actually hidden. But what I was hoping was that label that was sitting over here, let me just get out of here. I was hoping that the label that was sitting here would jump onto this fake block and over to this one. Now I tried connecting the block on one side only, figuring once the train got to this block it would somehow jump over, but the problem is that there has to be a physical block on the track. At least that's what I think needs to happen, and that's what I'm going to try next, because obviously this did not work. But as you can see, when I when I open up the real Cats display, those 2 lines that are up at the top that are wrapping around disappear like that. So the plan right now, and I think this might work, is that I'm going to assign that fake block that goes from here all the way around on both tracks. I'm going to assign a separate block to that using one of my available blocks that I have on my block detection. I have 2 available right now down here at the bottom. So I think, well, to test it out, I'm just going to run a wire straight through. But I think what I'm going to do is actually, since I have rail joiners here, and I have the gap that's here anyway for the control point, I think I'm just going to release this rail joiner, which is not soldered. I'm just going to push it back so it creates a gap here. And this is my detection track, the one that's closer to me. And I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to push this rail joiner out, creates a gap, and the gap for this is already there, the control point. And then I'm going to tie those 2 blocks that I just showed you into these 2 tracks. And I'm going to see if when the train comes into that block, it sets off the blank, and then just really briefly, because it's only from here to here, and then once it gets to this control point, hopefully it'll make it jump over to this. But I don't know what's going to happen, since the block that I'm wiring up right now is hidden, right? So I don't know if the label's going to be like in limbo here somewhere, or if it's just going to sit here until it recognizes the actual block and then jump over. Or it might just disappear. Since that block is hidden, it might just disappear and then jump over to here. But before I make anything permanent, I want to just run just a temporary wire straight through, like here. It's unfortunate that, I have to run it all the way to the far corner. But my other option would be I'd have to run it all the way through in there and then over to my other block detectors. I don't even know if I have any room in there anyway. So that's the plan. I'm going to try to do that next. And if anybody knows how to get around this, an easier way to get around this, please let me know. Because it would really be cool if if I'm running trains in a loop here, that I don't have to keep lifting the labels and putting them over there, which is what I have to do now when I dispatch, because the rest of the main line, you know, that's just an A to B. So with the reverses loops, so the labels follow through and they come back and they, you know, they go through all this and then they follow through here and they come back and there's no problems. It tracks beautifully. But as soon as I get into CSX, you know, I get to the end here and then it's got nowhere to go. So just, you know, I lose it. So I have to literally drag it with the mouse, put it over here, and then it'll track. But then when it gets here again, I have to drag it again. So, you know, it's a little bit annoying, especially when you're dispatching several trains, because you forget about it. So now all of a sudden you have this label there and you forgot where it came from. You know, it's like just sitting there. So yeah, again, if anybody knows of a better solution for that than what I'm going to do or going to try, I'd appreciate it if you let me know down below in the comments. One thing that I had to do though in order to make this work is that originally I had the panel stretched out all the way to the end of the screen here. So these blocks were actually over there, like I guess 3 cells over, and so were these. These were further out. But in order for me to make that turn for the blank tracks that I made, or the fake loops here that I made and just put up, I had to do this angle thing here. And since it's double track, it took more space than if it was just, for example, the top one. It would just be a quick little turning and up. But I had to make room. So that was a pain because I had to literally shrink the entire panel, which is tricky because you can really screw things up, especially when you already have things assigned and signals and things like that. So I had to be very careful when I took a chunk, you know, because you can basically select, like let's say, let me just make sure I save this first. But let's say I want to take my yard, my staging yard here, and I want to move it, right? So what I can do is select the top left-hand corner. That's always the control point. And then if I hit shift, let's see if I can do this with one hand. If I put the mouse down here, hit shift, and then select, it selects the entire thing. Now what I do to move it over is I hit Control X, which is really frightening because watch what happens. You're basically cutting it. And then I take that cell and I move it over as far as I want. So let's say I want to do it 3 cells over, and then I hit Control V, which is paste. And you can see the entire thing is still there with all the signals and all the detection still in place. But this is broken now, so you have to, you know, you have to do it that way. The problem is that if you select, like let's say I want to select a huge chunk like this, I can't move it over until I make room here. Otherwise, you're going to start overlapping stuff, and then it's really going to get confused, and you're going to lose signals. You're going to, you know, the detection is going to be all messed up because you have 2 different addresses on top of the same track. So I would not recommend doing it that way. Like make the space first. So, you know, I'm not going to save this, obviously. I'm just going to X out of it. But what I had to do is basically shorten. I had to shorten a few things. This track was as long as this one before. So I took basically one cell out of that. This one was also longer. I took one out of that. And these were also a little, well, one of them was longer. The other one was short. So I took it out of that. And then also over here, to make room for the end here, I took the staging tracks and I cut it down by 1 cell as well. So, you know, it was a little tricky, but either way, the thing with cats is that when it tracks, for example, that label that I was making, let me just see if I can get back into, yeah. So that label that I made here, like when it tracks, it only goes to the next cell. And this block here is actually 2 cells long. So you'll see like let's say we're going in this direction, it'll track to here, but it won't get to the front of the block. But once you get into the next block, it'll track to the next section, the next cell. And again, it would be nice if it was actually here because it's traveling in this direction. So I think the reason for that is that typically I think CTC panels look more like this, where there's only one little cell per block, and it's not, you don't have these elongated blocks like I do here. And I stretched them out just to make it look more pleasing to the eye, so you can see the block detection a little bit easier. And the reason why these are so long is just because I want to show, I want to show the entire screen for the CSX line rather than just a little, snippet. And also I had to bring, in order to like not clutter things up here, I had to bring the whole thing up. So that's why I had to go up with it and then back down, just to make a little space between the two railroads. So I was able to basically shift all this stuff this way and shift all this stuff this way. This side was really tricky with all this stuff going on here. This was a little bit easier. I was able to shift it, and then once I shifted these tracks over, it reconnected the blocks. I did lose a few signals here and there, like I lost this one while I was shifting things, and I lost this one. But it was easy to, put them back in without any major stress. So that's why it looks a little bit tighter than it does on other videos. The only thing is that some things got a little bit, like that. You can see that this was longer here, so I had this in the center before. I just got to move these over. That's easy. Labels are not a big deal. The problem is the blocks and the signals. That's where you can really screw things up. So I'm glad it was pretty smooth. I'm going to actually, before I forget, go back to my designer and close it out and not save it. Save existing layout? No. And when I go back to the designer program, let's see if it shows up correctly. And there you go. So that's where I'm going to leave it for now. So I'll be making another video soon, because I want to see if this thing works first, and then I'll make a video either way, whether it works or not, and then hopefully I can find a solution sooner than later, and make that work. But not too worried about it if it doesn't work. I can still run sessions, but it would be cool if I can figure it out. All right, thanks for watching.